Undercover boss buys a smartphone at his store, turns pale when the cashier revealed a dirty secret. The fluorescent lights of Techverse hummed overhead as Daniel Rhodes adjusted his worn baseball cap and shuffled through the automatic doors. Gone was his usual Armani suit, replaced by a faded flannel shirt from Goodwill and jeans that had seen better days. His normally pristine appearance was hidden beneath a scraggly beard he'd been growing for weeks and wire-rimmed glasses that made him look like any other middle-aged customer wandering into an electronics store on a Tuesday afternoon. Daniel had built Techverse from a single storefront in Cleveland into a nationwide chain of 847 stores, but he hadn't stepped foot in one as a regular customer in over 5 years. Board meetings, quarterly reports, and shareholder calls had consumed his life, creating a glass tower between him and the reality of his business. That changed last month when customer satisfaction scores began dropping across multiple locations, particularly in the Midwest region. "Something's not adding up," he told his assistant Sarah before leaving for this undercover mission. "Our revenue is up, but complaints are through the roof. I need to see what's really happening on the ground." The Grove City, Ohio location buzzed with afternoon activity. Daniel chose this store specifically. It was one of their top performers according to the numbers, generating nearly $2.3 million annually. If problems existed here, they likely existed everywhere. He picked up a shopping basket and wandered toward the smartphone display, his eyes scanning everything with the practiced attention of someone who'd built this empire from scratch. The store layout looked perfect: clean aisles, well-stocked shelves, and prominent sales signs exactly where corporate guidelines specified. But something felt off. Employees clustered in small groups, whispering among themselves, breaking apart whenever a manager walked by. "Can I help you find anything today, sir?" Daniel turned to find a young man approaching with an overly bright smile. His name tag read, Chris, Sales Associate, and everything about him screamed commission hunger. Chris couldn't have been older than 25, with perfectly styled hair and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Yeah, actually," Daniel replied, affecting a slight nervous stammer. "I'm Dave. I'm looking to upgrade my phone. Haven't bought one in, probably 4 years now. Technology moves so fast these days." Chris's eyes lit up like a predator spotting wounded prey. "Dave! Great name, buddy. You've come to the right place. 4 years? Man, you're in for a treat. The technology we have now will blow your mind." Daniel followed Chris to the smartphone wall, noting how the young man immediately steered him toward the most expensive models. This was normal sales behavior, but something about Chris's approach felt calculated in a way that made Daniel's businessman instincts prickle. "Now, Dave, what do you mainly use your phone for?" Chris asked, pulling down a top-of-the-line model worth $1,200. "Oh, calling my kids, some texting. Maybe taking pictures of my grandkids." Daniel played up the confused older customer angle perfectly. "Perfect. This baby here has a camera that'll make those grandkid photos look like they came from a professional studio. And the battery life? Forget about it. You'll go days without charging." For the next 20 minutes, Chris demonstrated features with practiced efficiency. Daniel had to admit, the kid knew his products. But as they moved toward the register, Chris's demeanor shifted. The fluorescent lights of Techverse hummed overhead as Daniel Rhodes adjusted his worn baseball cap and shuffled through the automatic doors. Gone was his usual Armani suit, replaced by a faded flannel shirt from Goodwill and jeans that had seen better days. His normally pristine appearance was hidden beneath a scraggly beard he'd been growing for weeks and wire-rimmed glasses that made him look like any other middle-aged customer wandering into an electronics store on a Tuesday afternoon. Daniel had built Techverse from a single storefront in Cleveland into a nationwide chain of 847 stores, but he hadn't stepped foot in one as a regular customer in over 5 years. Board meetings, quarterly reports, and shareholder calls had consumed his life, creating a glass tower between him and the reality of his business. That changed last month when customer satisfaction scores began dropping across multiple locations, particularly in the Midwest region. "Something's not adding up," he told his assistant Sarah before leaving for this undercover mission. Our revenue is up, but complaints are through the roof. I need to see what's really happening on the ground. The Grove City, Ohio location buzzed with afternoon activity. Daniel chose this store specifically. It was one of their top performers according to the numbers, generating nearly $2.3 million annually. If problems existed here, they likely existed everywhere. He picked up a shopping basket and wandered toward the smartphone display, his eyes scanning everything with the practiced attention of someone who'd built this empire from scratch. The store layout looked perfect: clean aisles, well-stocked shelves, and prominent sales signs exactly where corporate guidelines specified. But something felt off. Employees clustered in small groups, whispering among themselves, breaking apart whenever a manager walked by. "Can I help you find anything today, sir?" Daniel turned to find a young man approaching with an overly bright smile. His name tag read, Chris, sales associate, and everything about him screamed commission hunger. Chris couldn't have been older than 25, with perfectly styled hair and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Yeah, actually," Daniel replied, affecting a slight nervous stammer. "I'm Dave. I'm looking to upgrade my phone. Haven't bought one in, probably 4 years now. Technology moves so fast these days." Chris's eyes lit up like a predator spotting wounded prey. "Dave! Great name, buddy. You've come to the right place. 4 years? Man, you're in for a treat. The technology we have now will blow your mind." Daniel followed Chris to the smartphone wall, noting how the young man immediately steered him toward the most expensive models. This was normal sales behavior, but something about Chris's approach felt calculated in a way that made Daniel's businessman instincts prickle. "Now, Dave, what do you mainly use your phone for?" Chris asked, pulling down a top-of-the-line model worth $1,200. "Oh, calling my kids, some texting. Maybe taking pictures of my grandkids." Daniel played up the confused older customer angle perfectly. "Perfect. This baby here has a camera that'll make those grandkid photos look like they came from a professional studio. And the battery life? Forget about it. You'll go days without charging." For the next 20 minutes, Chris demonstrated features with practiced efficiency. Daniel had to admit, the kid knew his products. But as they moved toward the register, Chris's demeanor shifted. Daniel spread the TechVerse receipt across the small hotel desk like a detective examining evidence at a crime scene. The harsh overhead light cast sharp shadows across the paper as he pulled out his laptop and reading glasses, the real ones, not the costume pair from his disguise. The receipt told a simple story: one smartphone, applicable taxes, total paid to TechVerse. Clean, straightforward, exactly what corporate accounting would expect to see. But Daniel's phone showed a different story entirely. A PayPal confirmation for $199 paid to Shield Plus Premium Protection Services LLC. At 3:47 p.m., just minutes after his TechVerse purchase. 2 transactions. 2 separate companies. One invisible to his own corporate systems. Daniel opened his secure laptop and logged into TechVerse executive portal using credentials that granted him access to every system, every database, every vendor relationship the company maintained. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as he searched for any mention of Shield Plus. Nothing. He tried variations. Shield Plus, Shield Plus, Shield. Still nothing. No vendor agreements, no partnership contracts, no approved third-party warranty providers with that name. In 15 years of building TechVerse, Daniel had personally reviewed or approved every major business relationship. Shield Plus didn't exist in their ecosystem. His stomach churned as the implications became clear. Chris hadn't just sold an unauthorized warranty. He'd funneled customer money to a completely separate entity, while making it seem like an official TechVerse service. Daniel reached for his phone, then hesitated. He couldn't call corporate IT from his executive line. That would raise questions and potentially alert whoever was involved in this scheme. Instead, he grabbed the cheap burner phone he'd bought for this undercover operation and dialed the general IT support line. TechVerse IT support, this is Marcus speaking. How can I help you today? Daniel affected the same nervous customer voice he'd used with Chris. Hi there, Marcus. I'm hoping you can help me with something. I bought a phone at your Grove City store today, and the salesman sold me something called a Shield Plus protection plan. I'm trying to understand what that covers, but I can't find anything about it on your website. The pause on the other end stretched longer than it should have. Shield Plus, you said? Can you spell that for me? Daniel spelled it out slowly, listening to the clicking of keyboard keys in the background. Sir, I'm not showing any protection plans under that name in our system. Are you sure that's exactly how it was written? That's what's on my payment confirmation, Daniel replied, his heart racing. The salesman said it was through a premium partner company. More typing, then a longer pause. Sir, I'm going to need to transfer you to my supervisor. Can you hold for just a moment? The hold music felt eternal. When the line clicked back to life, a woman's voice came through, crisp and professional. This is Jennifer, IT Security. I understand you're asking about a company called Shield Plus? That's right. I paid them $199 for a protection plan today at Grove City. Sir, I need to be very clear with you. Techverse has no business relationship with any company by that name. If someone at our store processed a payment to them while representing it as a Techverse service, that's a serious concern. Can you provide me with the exact time and location of this transaction? Daniel's blood ran cold. He gave Jennifer the details, playing the confused customer perfectly while his business mind reeled from the confirmation of his worst fears. We're going to look into this immediately, Jennifer said. In the meantime, I'd recommend contacting your bank about that charge. This appears to be unauthorized use of our company's reputation. After hanging up, Daniel sat in stunned silence. This wasn't a gray area upselling technique or aggressive sales tactics. This was fraud. Pure and simple. But how deep did it go? Daniel's executive access allowed him to pull transaction data across the entire Techverse network. He started with Grove City, searching for any anomalies in warranty sales over the past year. What he found made his hands tremble. The Grove City store had sold $47,000 in official Techverse protection plans in the last 12 months. Normal performance for a store that size. But when he cross-referenced those sales with customer service calls and claims, something didn't add up. Customers were calling about protection plans that didn't exist in the system, plans they paid for but that showed no record in Techverse databases. Daniel expanded his search to include other stores in the Ohio region. Grove City wasn't alone. Columbus showed similar patterns. So did Toledo. And Cleveland. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he accessed banking reconciliation reports, documents that tracked every dollar flowing in and out of Techverse accounts. The official numbers looked perfect. Every penny accounted for, every transaction logged and verified. But Daniel had learned to look for what wasn't there. He pulled customer complaint logs and searched for keywords. Warranty, protection plan, not working, can't claim. Hundreds of complaints emerged from across Ohio stores. Customers who'd paid for protection plans that no one could find. Claims that couldn't be processed. Phone numbers that led to dead ends. Daniel created a spreadsheet and began calculating. Based on complaint patterns and his conversation with Jennifer, he estimated the scope of unauthorized warranty sales. The numbers that emerged made him dizzy. Over $400,000. $400,000 in 12 months, funneled away from Techverse and into the pockets of whoever was running this operation. Money that customers believed was protecting their purchases but was actually disappearing into thin air. This wasn't a rogue employee making bad decisions. This was organized, systematic, and sophisticated. Someone had created an entire parallel business model operating within his stores, using his company's reputation to steal from his customers. Daniel closed his laptop and walked to the hotel window, staring out at the Grove City shopping center where his store sat innocently among chain restaurants and department stores. From the outside, everything looked normal. Successful, even. But underneath, a cancer was growing. And tomorrow, he would begin cutting it out. The question that haunted him as he tried to sleep wasn't how this had happened, it was how many other locations were infected, and how high up the corruption reached. Daniel arrived at the Techverse store at 10 a.m. sharp, 30 minutes after opening. He'd spent the morning perfecting his, Dave, persona in the hotel mirror, same clothes, same nervous energy, but today with a specific mission. The parking lot was nearly empty except for employee cars, giving him the perfect opportunity to observe the morning dynamics. Through the front windows, he watched the staff going through their opening routine. Chris stood near the smartphone section, animatedly talking to two other employees. Even from a distance, Daniel could see the younger man's confident gestures, the way the others hung on his words. Whatever Chris was explaining, he clearly held their attention. And their respect. Daniel pushed through the doors with the hesitant shuffle of someone still overwhelmed by yesterday's purchase. He made a show of examining his new phone, fumbling with the screen like any technology-challenged middle-aged customer might. "Dave! Hey buddy!" Chris's voice boomed across the store. "How's that new phone treating you?" "Oh, hi Chris." Daniel waved awkwardly. "It's great, thanks. I'm just trying to figure out how to set up that protection thing you sold me yesterday. Do I need to call them or something?" Chris's smile flickered for just a moment. No, you're all set. Shield Plus handles everything automatically. You don't need to do anything on your end. But what if something happens? Like, how do I file a claim?" "Don't worry about it," Chris said quickly, already turning toward another customer. "It's all covered. Trust me." Daniel nodded and wandered away, but he'd seen enough. Chris clearly didn't want to discuss the details of how Shield Plus actually worked, probably because it didn't. As Chris became occupied with a family looking at tablets, Daniel drifted toward the customer service counter where a young woman was organizing returned merchandise. Her name tag read, "Lena Associate," and everything about her demeanor screamed part-time college student working to pay bills. She looked maybe 22, with tired eyes that suggested she was juggling school with work. "Excuse me," Daniel approached with his most harmless smile. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I bought a phone yesterday and I'm a little confused about the warranty situation." Lena looked up from her work, immediately alert in the way employees got when they sensed a potential complaint. "Oh, what kind of confusion? Maybe I can help." "Well, the salesman, Chris, nice kid, sold me something called a Shield Plus protection plan. But when I tried to look it up online last night, I couldn't find anything about it. Do you know how that system works?" The change in Lena's expression was instant and unmistakable. Her face went pale, and she glanced quickly toward Chris before looking back at Daniel with something that looked like fear. I'm not really involved with the warranty sales," she stammered. "That's more Chris's area." But Daniel had spent decades reading people in business negotiations. Lena knew something, and she was terrified about it. "Oh, I'm not complaining," Daniel said gently, leaning against the counter in a casual, non-threatening way. "I just want to understand what I bought." Chris seemed to know all about it, but you know how it is, sometimes you want a second opinion. Lena's hands fidgeted with the returned merchandise tags. She kept glancing around the store, checking who might be listening. Daniel recognized the behavior. She wanted to talk but was afraid of the consequences. "Look," Daniel lowered his voice to just above a whisper. "I paid $200 for this thing. If something's not right, I'd rather know now than find out later when I need to use it. You seem like someone who'd give me a straight answer." For a long moment, Lena stared at him, clearly wrestling with some internal conflict. Daniel waited, letting the silence stretch. Sometimes the best way to get information was to simply create space for someone to fill it. Finally, Lena exhaled slowly and leaned closer to the counter. "We weren't supposed to say anything," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But Chris made us push Shield Plus. All of us. Said it was his cousin's company, that they had this special deal with certain stores." Daniel's pulse quickened, but he kept his expression neutral. "His cousin's company? That's what he told us at first," Lena continued, glancing around again. "But then Kevin, He works in mobile accessories. He said Chris actually owns it. That it's not really his cousin at all. The pieces clicked into place in Daniel's mind with sickening clarity. Chris wasn't just a rogue employee stealing from customers. He was running his own business using Techverse as his storefront. Owns it? Daniel repeated carefully. Lena nodded, her voice getting quieter. And here's the thing that really bothered me. He gives us cash bonuses under the table for every Shield Plus plan we sell. $25 cash right after our shift. No taxes, no paperwork, just cash in our hands. Daniel felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. This wasn't just fraud, it was organized corruption involving multiple employees. Chris had created an incentive system that made his coworkers complicit in stealing from customers. How many people know about this? Daniel asked. Most of the sales floor, Lena admitted. Look, I never sold any myself. I mainly work returns and customer service. But the sales guys? They'd been pushing it for months. Chris told them corporate was cool with it, that it was some kind of pilot program. And management? Do they know? Lena's expression darkened. Mr. Knox, he's our regional director. He's been here twice in the last month. Both times, Chris made sure to mention how well the premium protection services were selling. Knox seemed pleased. Daniel's blood turned to ice. Regional Director Caleb Knox was someone Daniel knew personally, a 15-year company veteran who'd climbed the ranks from store associate to regional leadership. If Knox was aware of the Shield Plus operation, the corruption reached much higher than a single store. Lena, Daniel said carefully, why are you telling me this? She looked at him with eyes that seemed much older than her 22 years. Because I've been getting calls. Customers asking about claims, wanting to know why their protection plans don't work. And I have to lie to them. I have to pretend I don't know what they're talking about. Her voice broke slightly. I can't keep lying to people who trusted us with their money. It's not right. Daniel nodded slowly, his mind racing through the implications. This wasn't just about Chris or even about one store. This was a network of fraud that potentially reached into regional management, involving multiple employees and operating across multiple locations. Lena, he said quietly, thank you for being honest with me. You did the right thing. As he walked away from the counter, Daniel's hands shook slightly. What had started as a simple customer service investigation had become something far more serious. This was organized crime, operating under his own roof, corrupting his employees and stealing from his customers. And apparently, his own regional management was either complicit or willfully blind. The question now wasn't just how to stop it, it was how deep the rot had spread through his entire organization. Back in his hotel room, Daniel's laptop hummed as he accessed Techverse's most sensitive databases. His executive credentials opened doors that few people in the company could even see, revealing the intricate web of data that tracked every transaction, every employee, every operational detail across their 847 locations. Regional Director Caleb Knox oversaw 14 stores across Central Ohio. If Knox was truly aware of the Shield Plus operation, as Lena had suggested, then Grove City wouldn't be an isolated incident. Daniel started with Columbus, Techverse's flagship Ohio location, generating over $3.2 million annually. He pulled the same transaction analysis he performed for Grove City, searching for the telltale patterns of unauthorized warranty sales. The results made his coffee cup rattle as he set it down with shaking hands. Columbus showed 127 customer complaints in the past year about missing protection plans. Plans customers had paid for but couldn't claim. Phone numbers that led to dead ends. The exact same pattern as Grove City, but on a larger scale. Toledo was next. Then Akron. Then Youngstown. Store after store under Knox's supervision revealed the same systematic fraud. Different employees, different customer bases, but identical operational fingerprints. Shield Plus, or companies with suspiciously similar names like Shield Pro and Premium Shield Services, appeared in transaction records that somehow never made it into official Techverse systems. Daniel created a comprehensive spreadsheet, calculating the scope of the theft across Knox's entire region. The number that emerged made him physically nauseous. $1.3 million. Over $1 million in unauthorized warranty sales across 14 stores in 12 months. Money that customers believed was protecting their purchases. Money that was instead disappearing into a network of shell companies that existed solely to enrich whoever was orchestrating this massive fraud. But who was orchestrating it? Chris was clearly involved, but a 25-year-old sales associate couldn't have created this sophisticated an operation across multiple locations. Daniel opened a new browser window and accessed Ohio's Secretary of State Business Registry. If Shield Plus was a legitimate company, it would have to be registered somewhere. He searched for Shield Plus LLC and found exactly what he expected and feared. Shield Plus Premium Protection Services LLC had been incorporated 8 months ago. The registered agent was listed as Marcus Williamson, with an address that turned out to be a UPS store mailbox in downtown Columbus. A proxy. Someone hired to sign documents and shield the real owners from public view. But every business registration required contact information. Daniel copied the phone number from the filing and ran it through TechVerse's employee database, a system that contained personal contact information for all 12,000 employees across the company. The match hit him like a physical blow. The phone number belonged to Rebecca Chin, Senior Compliance Analyst in TechVerse's legal department. Rebecca Chin, who had access to vendor contracts, employee policies, and fraud prevention protocols. Rebecca Chin, whose LinkedIn profile showed she'd gotten engaged 6 months ago to Chris M. in a post filled with heart emojis and photos of a diamond ring. Chris's fiancée worked in TechVerse's legal compliance department. Daniel stared at his laptop screen in stunned silence as the full scope of the operation became clear. This wasn't just a rogue employee stealing from customers. This was a coordinated network involving sales staff, regional management, and legal insiders who understood exactly how to exploit the system's vulnerabilities. Rebecca Chin would have known precisely how TechVerse fraud detection systems worked. She would have understood which transactions triggered audits and which ones flew under the radar. She could have helped design the Shield Plus operation to avoid every safeguard the company had put in place. And if Regional Director Knox was involved, that meant someone with authority over 14 stores was actively facilitating the fraud, possibly recruiting new participants and covering for the scheme when questions arose. Daniel's phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment he panicked, thinking somehow his investigation had been discovered. But it was just Sarah, his assistant, asking about his return flight. The normalcy of the message felt surreal. While he was uncovering the largest fraud in TechVerse history, the rest of the company continued operating as if everything was fine. Board meetings were being scheduled, quarterly reports prepared, stock prices monitored. None of them knew that a cancer was eating the company from the inside. Daniel returned to his analysis, pulling employment records for key personnel across Knox's region. What he found deepened his dread. Several of the top-performing sales associates in Knox's stores had started within the past 8 months, right around the time Shield Plus was incorporated. New hires who immediately began generating exceptional warranty sales numbers. Were they legitimate employees who'd been recruited into the fraud? Or were they plants, people specifically hired to expand the operation? Cross-referencing hiring dates with Shield Plus sales patterns, Daniel found his answer. The new hires weren't just participating in the fraud, they were driving it. Their exceptional performance in warranty sales had earned them recognition in regional newsletters and even caught the attention of corporate leadership. TechVerse had been celebrating the very people who were stealing from its customers. Daniel closed his laptop and walked to the hotel room window, looking out at the lights of Grove City. Somewhere out there, customers were going to sleep believing their purchases were protected, trusting a company that Daniel had built on principles of honesty and value. That trust was being systematically violated by people he'd hired, people he'd promoted, people he'd trusted with his company's reputation. The scope of betrayal was staggering. Sales associates, regional directors, legal compliance officers, a network of corruption that reached deep into Techverse's organizational structure. Tomorrow, he would have to decide how to expose it all without destroying the company he'd spent 15 years building. But first, he needed to know exactly how high the corruption reached. If Rebecca Chin in legal compliance was involved, and Regional Director Knox was complicit, who else in corporate leadership might be part of this scheme? The possibility that the fraud reached into the executive level made Daniel's hands shake as he reached for his phone. He had one more night to investigate before he would have to act. One more night to discover just how deep the rot had spread through his life's work. The Grove City Techverse conference room buzzed with the usual energy of a quarterly store meeting. 23 employees filled the cramped space, chatting about sales targets and new product launches while waiting for Regional Director Caleb Knox to begin his presentation. Coffee cups and donuts created the familiar atmosphere of corporate routine. Chris sat in the front row, his confident demeanor unchanged from 3 days earlier when he'd sold Dave the fraudulent protection plan. He laughed with colleagues, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. Lena occupied a seat near the back, looking nervous but determined. Daniel had contacted her privately the night before, explaining everything and asking for her cooperation. Her courage in coming forward had been the final piece he needed. At exactly 9 a.m., the conference room door opened. But instead of Caleb Knox, a figure in an expensive charcoal suit entered, followed by 2 people Lena didn't recognize, a woman with a briefcase and a man carrying a tablet. "Good morning, everyone," Daniel said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of executives. "I'm Daniel Rhodes, CEO and founder of Techverse." The reaction was instantaneous. Coffee cups froze halfway to lips. Conversations died mid-sentence. Chris's face went from confident to confused to terrified in the span of seconds. "I know this is unexpected," Daniel continued, walking to the front of the room with the measured pace of a prosecutor approaching a jury. "You were expecting Regional Director Knox, but he won't be joining us today. He's currently meeting with our legal team about some irregularities we've discovered." Daniel gestured to the woman with the briefcase. "This is Jennifer Martinez from our Corporate Security Division, and this is Detective Ray Cooper from the Grove City Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit." The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Several employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but Daniel's eyes remained fixed on Chris, whose face had gone completely pale. "3 days ago, I visited this store undercover," Daniel said, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of controlled fury. "I posed as a customer named Dave, looking to buy a smartphone. And one of your colleagues sold me something very interesting." Daniel pulled out his phone and connected it to the room's presentation screen. The PayPal transaction appeared in large letters. $199 paid to Shield Plus Premium Protection Services LLC. "Chris, you remember Dave, don't you?" Chris's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Hi, sir, I can explain." "Please do," Daniel said. "Explain to your colleagues how Shield Plus works. Explain how you've been collecting nearly $200 from customers for protection plans that don't exist. Explain how you've been paying cash bonuses to your coworkers for participating in systematic theft." The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. Several employees turned to stare at Chris, whose confident facade was crumbling in real time. "That's not... I mean, it's a legitimate company," Chris stammered. "We have an arrangement." "With whom?" Daniel's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Because Techverse has no contract with Shield Plus. No business relationship. No authorization for any employee to sell their services." Jennifer Martinez opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "We've identified over 400 fraudulent transactions across this region in the past 12 months, totaling $1.3 million in unauthorized charges to customers who believed they were purchasing legitimate Techverse protection plans." Daniel clicked to the next slide, showing a web of connections between Shield Plus, Chris, Rebecca Chin, and Regional Director Knox. "We've also discovered that Shield Plus LLC is owned through a proxy by Rebecca Chin, Senior Compliance Analyst in our legal department. Ms. Chin, Who happens to be engaged to? Daniel paused dramatically. Chris Morrison. Chris's composure finally shattered completely. Look, it started small, okay? Just a few sales here and there. Rebecca said she knew how to set it up so nobody would notice. Knox said as long as our other numbers looked good, he didn't care how we made extra money. Extra money? Daniel's voice rose for the first time, his carefully controlled anger breaking through. You mean stolen money? Money taken from customers who trusted us with their business. Chris buried his face in his hands. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. The customers weren't really losing anything because most people never used their protection plans anyway. That's not the point. Daniel's voice echoed off the conference room walls. They paid for a service they believed they were getting. You stole their money and betrayed their trust. You've damaged relationships it took us 15 years to build. Detective Cooper stepped forward. Mr. Morrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and theft by deception. As Chris was handcuffed, Daniel turned to address the stunned room. Rebecca Chun and Regional Director Caleb Knox have been terminated, effective immediately. A criminal investigation is underway. Techverse will be issuing full refunds to every customer affected by this scheme. He paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. We're also launching a fraud reporting hotline and implementing new oversight protocols to ensure this never happens again. Daniel's eyes found Lena in the back of the room. I want to thank those employees who had the courage to come forward about this situation. Your integrity in the face of pressure shows the kind of character Techverse truly values. He walked over to Lena, who looked terrified but proud. Ms. Rodriguez, effective immediately, you're promoted to Customer Experience Supervisor, with a 20% salary increase. We're also establishing a scholarship fund, and you'll be our first recipient, full tuition for your IT degree. As Chris was led away in handcuffs, his shocked colleagues processing the revelation that their top performer had been a criminal, Daniel felt a mixture of satisfaction and deep sadness. Justice was being served, but the damage to Techverse's reputation would take years to repair. The company he'd built on trust had been betrayed from within, and rebuilding that trust would be his greatest challenge yet. But it would start here, in this room, with the employees who chose integrity over easy money. It would start with doing the right thing, no matter how much it cost. 6 months later, Daniel Rhodes sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor of Techverse headquarters, staring at a wall covered with news clippings, legal documents, and customer letters. The past half-year had been the most challenging period in the company's 15-year history, but also perhaps the most important. The headlines told the story in stark black and white. Techverse CEO uncovers $1 million fraud ring. Electronics chain pays $2.1 million in customer refunds. 3 former employees sentenced in corporate theft case. Each article was a reminder of how close his company had come to losing everything he'd worked to build. Chris Morrison had been sentenced to 18 months in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution. Rebecca Chun received 2 years and was permanently barred from working in corporate compliance. Regional Director Caleb Knox, whose willful blindness had enabled the scheme to flourish, lost his pension and faced civil liability that would follow him for years. But the real damage wasn't measured in prison sentences or legal settlements. It was measured in broken trust, cancelled orders, and the 127 employees across 14 stores who lost their jobs when Techverse temporarily closed Knox's entire region for operational restructuring. Daniel had spent countless sleepless nights asking himself the same questions. How had he become so disconnected from his own company? When had quarterly reports and board meetings become more important than the customers and employees who made everything possible? The answer was uncomfortable but clear. Success had insulated him from reality. 5 consecutive years of record growth had created a false sense of security, a belief that strong numbers meant everything was running smoothly. He trusted regional directors like Knox to maintain standards without actually verifying that they were doing so. The fish rots from the head, his father had always said. Daniel finally understood what that meant. 3 weeks after the Grove City confrontation, Daniel had announced the Integrity from the Ground Up initiative to the entire company. The program represented the most comprehensive operational overhaul in Techverse history. Every store would receive unannounced undercover audits quarterly. Not corporate executives in disguise, but professional shoppers trained to identify fraud, customer service failures, and policy violations. The audit reports went directly to Daniel's office, bypassing regional management entirely. The Employee Protection Program established anonymous reporting channels and whistleblower protections stronger than federal requirements. Any employee who reported fraud or ethical violations received automatic job protection and, if terminated for any reason within 2 years, would receive full salary continuation until they found comparable employment. Most importantly, Daniel had restructured the entire management hierarchy. Regional directors now reported to a new chief ethics officer position filled by someone from outside Techverse, a former FBI financial crimes investigator who answered only to Daniel and the board of directors. The changes hadn't been painless. Revenue dropped 12% in the first quarter as stores adjusted to new procedures and rebuilt customer confidence. 3 regional directors resigned rather than submit to increased oversight. Some employees complained about the additional training requirements and stricter sales guidelines. But gradually, the culture began to shift. Customer satisfaction scores, which had plummeted during the fraud revelation, slowly climbed back toward historical levels. Anonymous employee surveys showed increasing trust in management and pride in working for Techverse. Most tellingly, voluntary ethics reports increased by 340%. Employees who previously would have stayed silent about questionable practices now felt empowered to speak up. Minor issues were caught and corrected before they could become major problems. Daniel decided it was time for another undercover visit. On a crisp Tuesday morning in March, Dave walked through the familiar doors of the Grove City Techverse store. The layout was identical, but the atmosphere felt completely different. Employees moved with purpose rather than nervous energy. Conversations between staff members happened openly rather than in whispered clusters. Behind the customer service counter, Lena Rodriguez looked up from her computer terminal and smiled. 6 months as customer experience supervisor had given her confidence that radiated through her interactions with both customers and colleagues. Her name tag now read, Lena Rodriguez, Customer Experience Supervisor, and the pride in her bearing was unmistakable. "Good morning, sir," she said warmly. "How can I help you today?" Daniel approached the counter with his familiar nervous shuffle. "Hi there. I'm thinking about buying a new tablet, but I'm worried about protection plans. I had a bad experience with one a while back." Lena's expression grew sympathetic but confident. "I completely understand your concern. We've made significant changes to how we handle protection services. Everything we offer is provided directly through Techverse, with clear terms and guaranteed claim processing. We don't work with any third-party warranty companies anymore." She leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on the tone of someone genuinely committed to helping. "But honestly, the best protection for your investment is understanding exactly what you're buying and how to use it properly. Would you like me to show you our protection options and explain exactly how each one works?" Daniel nodded, watching as Lena pulled up information on her terminal and began explaining Techverse simplified protection plans. Everything was transparent, clearly priced, and backed by the company's direct commitment. No mysterious third parties, no separate payment systems, no hidden agendas. "We don't sell warranties we can't honor anymore," Lena said, concluding her explanation. "Our job isn't to maximize profit on protection plans. It's to make sure customers understand their options and feel confident in their purchase." As Daniel prepared to leave, Lena added with genuine pride, "We don't sell that fake warranty stuff anymore. But we do protect people now. Really protect them." Daniel smiled, feeling something he hadn't experienced in months, genuine pride in the company he built. Walking toward the exit, he overheard a young sales associate explaining smartphone features to an elderly customer with patient detail, taking time to ensure the man understood each function rather than rushing toward an expensive upsell. Outside in the parking lot, Daniel Rhodes, CEO of Techverse, architect of a retail empire, and guardian of 12,000 jobs, felt like his company finally stood for something meaningful again. It had taken a devastating betrayal to remind him what really mattered. But sometimes, the most important lessons came from the deepest failures. Techverse would continue growing, but never again at the expense of the trust that made growth possible. The real money, Daniel now understood, wasn't in clever schemes or hidden profits. It was in doing right by the people who believed in you. The end.